Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Capadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Get Paid for Your Pad podcast 238. Coming to you from Puerto Rico. This is going to be a really interesting episode because it's a first in many ways. I have three amazing guests. And also, we're recording this live on Facebook. We're live on Instagram, so people can join in, people can ask questions. It's going to be really fun. We're going to be talking all about Airbnb opportunities in Puerto Rico, but also, the general idea of moving here. A lot of people came to Puerto Rico for many reasons. Obviously, there's been some adversity in the last few years here. So we're going to talk all about that. But first, let me introduce the guests. So we have Vincenzo Villamena from Medellin. Vincenzo's been on the podcast twice, actually. He's got some Airbnb properties in Medellin. He's the Online Taxman. He's going to talk a little bit about tax advantages in Puerto Rico. Then we have Nadia, who is a superhost here in Puerto Rico. And then we have Andrew, who's an investor, and many other things. But we're going to talk all about that. But let's start with Nadia. Nadia, you grew up here, right, in Puerto Rico? You were born and raised. Okay, cool. So, can you give a summary of what's been going on here for the last couple of years?
Bueno, pues we have a new governor, which has really changed things, in my opinion. A lot of people hate him. I think he's actually doing a pretty good job. I got my tax return in 11 days. That's ridiculously fast. So,
and you didn't have to pay any taxes?
I paid very little. There are potholes. We have a problem with the streets here, and I've seen how he's actually fixing them. So I've always said that, I kind of say how the government is doing regarding if I see what's going on with the streets and with this tax return, because those are two things that are always an ordeal here. So if he did a really good job or is doing a good job with both, that makes me think that the rest of the government has to be running a little smoother than before. So I think that's good. Many people might disagree with me, but it's just common things we deal with here every day, and if they're working better, well, that's good. So I first see a good future with this government. And so things that have been going on in Puerto Rico, I would say before this new governor, we were having a lot of problems with just really bad management in general in the country. So I think it's a positive thing that we have a new administration and they definitely seem more organized. Obviously, we got hit by Maria, but honestly, looking back, I really feel like in general, we have really done a good job getting back on our feet. Some people might disagree with me. That's really what I feel. I look around and I'm like, wow, 6 months ago, I was making 4-hour lines to get gas, and now everything is really running pretty smoothly, especially in the city. And so I don't know. Maybe I'm optimistic, but yeah, I guess I am optimistic, and I really love it here, so I'm willing to fight for it to work. So apart from all those things, what else can I tell you? definitely Airbnb is something that has been popping up in the past years, and that's like definitely a new trend. So
And how long have you been hosting?
what?
How long have you been hosting on Airbnb?
It's like 2 years.
2 years, right? And
Yes.
how many listings do you have?
One.
Okay. I saw it.
I saw it.
Awesome. Well, let's Andrew. You've how long have you been in Puerto Rico?
5 years.
5 years. And what made you come down here?
I relocated down here with a firm I was working for, a hedge fund at the time. I quit after about a year, and I just decided to stay. I loved it. I had no intentions of ever leaving. I did end up getting another job offer. I wasn't going to take it at first, but it was a pretty good offer, so I ended up taking it and working for another hedge fund for a few more years before going out on my own, which is what I originally wanted to do, and just managing my own portfolio of investments and running a little trading account. But I don't really trade anymore. I look for the long-term investments, and real estate is one of the best investment assets in my opinion. So I've been doing that for the last couple of years, just managing my own portfolio, and it's turned into a lot of Puerto Rican real estate.
Sweet. And are you currently hosting on Airbnb or?
I am.
Oh, you are. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's go to Vincenzo. So Vincenzo, you're just like me. Vincenzo came down to speak at a conference here that was organized by FAR International. The conference was all about Airbnb, about investing, but also about taxes, and that's your specialty, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been interesting to kind of learn, just the incentives down here, and then really just kind of meet the people down here that are moving and kind of creating this sort of expat community. Due to the whole tax incentives here, basically Act 2822, which basically, if someone sets up a company, they get a 4% corporate tax rate, and they can take the dividends out of the company tax-free. So for a lot of Americans that are living in the U.S. and getting killed with taxes, to be able to get rid of your state tax and really cut your tax down by more than half. And so the people that are able to do that, have the flexibility to make the move. It's been super attractive. I've talked to a lot of people just at the conference and in general around the island that have moved because of that. So you kind of just see that sort of expat community growing, which again I think does kind of translate into the investment side, right? Because a lot of these people from stateside have high expectations as far as where they want to live. Getting a short-term Airbnb to either feel it out until they ultimately move here, ultimately kind of get something long-term or buy. So you kind of have that play when it comes to the whole Airbnb investing. And just in general, I mean, the vibe here is good. There's a lot of really smart, interesting, entrepreneurial people here.
Awesome. Let's go back to Nadia. Nadia, tell us about Airbnb in Puerto Rico. One concern that a lot of hosts have around the world is that the authorities are getting more strict about Airbnb. There's regulations popping up. Some cities are trying to ban it. Like Berlin, Amsterdam, a lot of cities here in the U.S., New York, San Francisco, Santa Monica. What's the situation like here?
I would say in general, Puerto Rico, as of right now, is pretty Airbnb friendly. We're equal to probably one city in other places. So maybe you say like they want to ban Airbnb in this city in the world, in some city in the world. Here, that would be equal to banning Airbnb in all of Puerto Rico, and that's not going to happen.
Right.
Ever. I don't think so. From what I'm seeing, especially because at the moment, our administration, which is something awesome about our governor, is that he's pretty young and he's very into technology and he's very into like the disruptive, everything that's disruptive. Like he loves Uber and he loves crypto and he loves Airbnb and he understands these things. So when you're talking about our government and what they might put in place to like make Airbnb not function, I wouldn't really be worried about it. The only thing that you need to be worried about in Puerto Rico is that when you buy a unit, you need to make sure that in the condominium they permit Airbnb. So you're gonna find that is the hard part. But it's interesting because you already have 5. I don't know if so. definitely you're a good example that it's, that's the hardest part, but it's completely doable. So it depends on how that building is administered, and then you just ask about their laws, and if they permit Airbnb, and if they permit it, your game. This whole the city is going to ban. I really don't see that happening in any city.
And I think it's important that you look at the deed of the condominium.
Yes.
Because I believe in Puerto Rican law it takes 100% unanimous vote to change the deed, whereas the bylaws it's much easier to change. And sometimes the residents of the building, the owners, will get together. In most buildings, I'd say most of the residents, they hate Airbnb. So in almost every building I've come across, there's a push to stifle and end Airbnb in each individual building. But to change the bylaws, it takes 3/4 or maybe, I think it's around 3/4 vote or 2/3 vote or something like that. But the point I'm trying to make is if in the deed it explicitly states that it's allowed, then you're in good shape. Because it takes almost unanimous decision. I believe it's unanimous decision to change the deed.
Says that it's actually allowed to do short-term rental.
Or commercial
use.
Activity.
Commercial use,
but usually what they say in the deed is they're either gonna put that you can only rent out for a minimum of 6 months, or they don't put it. So if they put that you can only rent out for a minimum of 6 months, that's equal to short term is not allowed.
Right.
If it's not in there, then
you assume it is.
Then it is, because you're not restricting how long I have to rent out for. So that's usually what.
And the bottom line is I think kind of what you're already saying. I think from a regulatory standpoint, I think the probabilities of them actually clamping down on Airbnb like they have in New York or San Francisco is rather low. Yeah. I think it's rather low. This island is under-hoteled massively. There's a push for tourism, and they don't have nearly enough hotels. Exactly. And the ones they do have, they have a lot of 5-star hotels, which I think is crazy because the target market is not, this isn't St. Bart's, Although it is a beautiful island, it's not St. Bart's. It's not some of these other Caribbean islands where people are willing to drop $600, $700, $800 a night. It's Puerto Rico, You get a lot of middle-class Americans here, and Airbnb is the perfect way to, the perfect platform for those people who are looking for a $150 room a night, $200 room a night for their family. So I think the probabilities are rather low, but it's always a risk. It's in my models. I think the bigger risk is the residents of that specific building.
Yeah,
right.
I
Have
think
you seen a lot of change as far as like in your buildings, or at least sort of people getting screwed by that?
It's building by building, right? It depends on how many people are already doing it and how many people are against it. Because usually the people against it are very loud, very vocal. They change the minds of all the people who live in the building. But if there's already enough investors there doing this, they're going to have a lot of trouble because none of them are going to vote to clamp down on Airbnb. The question is how many residents of the building can they get to convince that it's a bad thing?
No, it's funny.
The economics of it.
In Medellin, it's the opposite, where you have minimum 30-day, month-to-month rentals, but then some buildings, if enough foreign investors come in and overtake the building and have over 50% majority or 2/3, then it's the other way, where they actually change the bylaws of the building to allow for short-term rental, and then then it's just an investment building for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I would also add that the government here in Puerto Rico is collecting taxes from the Airbnb hosts, right? They're collecting 7%, and so I think that's another reason why it's unlikely that they will ban it, because they're making money of it, and they're clearly showing that they're committed to Airbnb. They're working with Airbnb,
and they clearly need tax revenue,
and they definitely need a little bit of income. By the way, this is, we're live on Instagram. A lot of people are watching, a lot of people are waving. So, welcome everybody. We're here in Puerto Rico. We're talking about Airbnb. We're talking about investment opportunities. We're talking about taxes. You don't pay a lot of taxes here in Puerto Rico if you're an American citizen. At least I don't know how it works for, strange foreigners like myself. But in any case, let's move on. So just to summarize, if you want to do Airbnb here in Puerto Rico, you want to check out, what are the regulations of the building, right? You don't have to worry so much about the government, but you do want to worry about like your neighbors, the other people that live in your building. Now, I've noticed that on Zillow and other real estate websites, it's often stated whether you can do short-term rental or not in the building. So it's that kind of tells me that it's a very popular topic. A lot of people are looking to do Airbnb. What do you guys think of the market here in terms of competitiveness? And is there still room for Airbnb hosts to come here? Or
I think, especially since the hurricanes, I mean, the cat kind of was out of the bag maybe a year ago is when I really started seeing the explosion. When I first got here in 2013, I saw the immense opportunity there, right? There was very few Airbnbs. All the real estate values were like this. The tourism was starting to go like this. It was a perfect storm for Puerto Rico. You could buy really, really beautiful beachfront property for retarded prices, right? Like, I thought there was something going on because it took me a while to like figure out like, wait, this house is $500,000? Like, where I'm from, that's a $5 million home, wow. But it was a beautiful thing. But the cat was kind of released from the bag about a year ago. Big money started coming down. And then I think the kicker is ever since Maria, even the Puerto Ricans living in the tourist neighborhoods realized like, my lifestyle is getting affected. My income has been drastically reduced. Maybe it's time I list my home on Airbnb and I move in with, mom or dad or friends or family, maybe in Caguas or inland a little bit and so anyways, the supply has definitely expanded, which is what concerns me. So the supply is expanding fairly rapidly. And so now I'm looking at very unique properties, not just a room with a bed and an AC unit and a Wi-Fi connection. I'm looking for something that has that really unique factor to it where you can charge that premium.
I think that's right.
That's probably good advice for anywhere, right? You always want to stand out on Airbnb, think about like who are the people that visit here, what's your audience, how do you cater to them, and pick your audience and make sure your listing is catering to those people. Vincenzo, what's your general idea about this island? Like, we've been here about a week now.
Yeah.
You've been here before, but a while ago. Like, what's your feel? What do you think?
No, I mean, like I said, I think you see it and you smell it in the air. You kind of see it in the streets. Like, there's a lot of good stuff happening. I mean, there's a lot of people trying to move down here. I mean, I think that community will continue to grow again for the tax incentives as kind of the cat's getting out of the bag as far as the whole like Act 20 and 22. That along with the whole crypto scene moving down here, and you have like Brock Pierce and
what's the deal with the crypto people here? Why are the crypto people coming to Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so I mean, again, along with the tax incentive, right, along with kind of setting up a business and getting the 4% corporate tax and dividend free, there's no capital gains on the island, meaning that if you buy and sell stock or if you buy and sell crypto, that's all tax-free to people, right? So then, like a few years ago, it was Paulson and Peter Schiff and all the hedge fund guys, all the, the traders, et cetera, that came down here. That was kind of the first wave. And now, as more and more people find out about Act 2022, now it's all the crypto people, right? Because all these guys, especially the ones that got in early, have amassed an enormous amount of unrealized gains. So meaning that when they ultimately sell their crypto, they're going to have to pay tax on that. So by moving down here, any sort of new positions that they take in crypto and even part of their old gains, they can get tax free when they sell it. So you kind of see that. Like I said, there's some big names that have kind of moved down here and really start promoting Puerto Rico. So yeah, I mean, as you see more and more interest, more and more people are going to come down here. More and more people are going to have to, live here either long term or, 6 months, et cetera. And so I think that's probably good for, the sort of short, medium term rental market. And and B, I think just more and more money is going to start flowing down here, right? And so I think that's just kind of good for the island in general. Hopefully, with the government and whatnot, some of the corruption will be eliminated and there'll be some real progress. But, like I said, you feel it in the air as far as like the overall community, be it people living down here, people want to invest here, etc. I definitely see that.
So if I'm an American citizen and I have $1 million worth of Bitcoin, I can just move to Puerto Rico and then I can cash out my Bitcoins and I don't pay any tax?
Yeah, I mean, well, what you have to do is you have to bifurcate kind of the holding period, right? So there's a period, let's say you held your Bitcoin for a year before you moved down here, and then you sell it a year from now, right? So again, in total, you've held the Bitcoin for 2 years. So you would actually have to bifurcate or separate that gain. So the year before you came, and then obviously the year after you sell, that means that you lived in Puerto Rico 50% of the holding period. So 50% of that gain when you sell it a year from now will be tax free. And so you kind of have to do that. And that, again, was with anything, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's any sort of stock or trading positions, etc. You get to bifurcate that gain. But again, obviously, people that are sitting on millions of dollars of gains, that's a huge deal.
Right. Got it. Cool. Nadia, what kind of advice do you have for people who wanna come to Puerto Rico, who wanna come to San Juan, where we are right now, and to do Airbnb, to do short-term rentals?
Advice.
Or Andrew, if you want to chime in, feel free.
Probably get a good resource here. Somebody that knows, like me and Andrew would be great resources. People that are already here, they already know the areas, and they can give you good tips on what are the best parts to buy. And once you choose different options, like you have a couple of options that you want to buy, maybe have that resource that will tell you, this one I wouldn't really recommend it because of this, and I would recommend buying this one. So I think it's finding a good resource in Puerto Rico that facilitates the process.
Right. I agree with that. It's a very opaque market where the information isn't as disseminated like it is in the United States and most first world Western countries where information is everywhere. Right? There's no MLS here, and it's a lot of the insiders with all the real good information. So try and find some of those people. Nadia is probably one of them who just understands the market on a deep level. I feel like I'm one of those people as well, because coming down here and trying to learn yourself takes time. It took me a couple of years before I really understood this market, because for the longest time I was just so confused as to why everything's so cheap and this, that, the other, and I just really understanding all the factors at play down here. It's a very different market than the United States anyways. So it could really speed up that learning curve if you get some people who are good and who have that information, as opposed to trying figuring it out for yourself.
Right, and we've been here now a week. We've looked at some properties, and I feel like I'm sure there's opportunity here to invest in short-term rentals, but it's not like I don't feel like it's you could just come in and buy anything. I think you really need to do some research and find a property. You need to dig a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And if you do dig and you put in the time, there's real gems buried in the dirt. They're not at the surface level. You got to dig and you got to work. But I've found some absolutely amazing investments here, and there still is amazing investments here. But just showing up, walking into a bank and asking for the bank list you're not going to find it, right? Yeah. As most of us know, there's two bank lists. There's the one that goes out to the banker's friends and colleagues, and there's the one that's available to the public, and same thing with agents. They take all their best stuff. I'll get calls randomly. A lot of my stuff is off-market deals that I've come across where they're like, hey, this is going to be listed in a few weeks. You should probably take a look at it and make an offer if you like it. And that's just how it, it's a very old school buddy network down here. So it's all in who you know, and who likes you, I guess.
Right. And how long do you think would it take? If I would say okay, I want to come down to Puerto Rico, I want to buy an apartment, I want to put it on Airbnb. How long? What kind of time frame should I be looking at?
If you're buying distress that needs work, it's going to take a little bit longer, especially now. A lot of the blue-collar workforce, the guys that do your electricity, your plumbing, your contractors. There's a bit of a labor shortage at the moment, so that's another little tricky thing at the moment. A lot of those guys went to the States after the hurricane. The ones that stayed, they got more work than they know what to do with. The good ones, anyways. I have my list of good ones, and I'm constantly working down that list, trying to get the best guys at the best price to do the work as fast as possible. But man, it's been a tough dance. It's been a really tough dance since the hurricanes, and there's been a couple times where I just got ridiculous quotes, and I was bluffing, but I said, there's no way I could do this. Like, give me a better quote, When in all reality, if my contractor would have said that's what we got, then I just would have said, okay, let's do it. But fortunately, I've had guys willing to come down a little bit, but I'm still paying prices that I don't really like to pay for work, just in the light of getting things done as quickly as possible.
So the time frame, how much would you say that it would take? Like,
it's very, very dependent, right? Like, I have a good relationship with my contractors, so they're willing to.
If it's not distressed,
just to find a good price.
If it's not distressed, and you can just buy a turnkey.
Oh, a turnkey.
A turnkey. How much would you say?
Well, if you're financing is another thing down here. It's a little bit more tricky. Financing down here, they're much more conservative than in the States. So there's generally a 45 to a 60-day application process with a high rejection rate, which is another thing. Cash is king down here. Really amplifies your negotiating leverage. So the application process is about 45 to 60 days. And then closing would probably be another 30 days because there's a due diligence process. Mm-hmm. It's not as standardized as things are in the U.S. where things can move very quickly. Here, it's clunky, it's old school. It just seems to take a much longer time. And there's a lot of pitfalls you got to be very, very careful for. So you got to get a good lawyer who really, crosses her T's and dots her I's and make sure everything is done correctly.
I think if you have the right team and you're super aggressive, you could actually option a property and have those keys in your hands in like 2 months. If you're really aggressive. So that's give it at least 2 months, and probably to be a little more conservative, give it 3. With the right team, good brokers that, are fast, and once you tell them that you want a property, they move fast to get it optioned. And so I think 3 months is probably doable with the right team. If it's a little slower, then I guess.
And if it's a cash deal, obviously, it'll go faster as well.
Right. Does it take a long time?
That's the big bottleneck.
Yeah. Cash deals are faster.
Yeah. And I mean, it is possible to get a mortgage here. One of the interesting things about Puerto Rico is it's part of the U.S. So if you're living in the U.S., you can get a mortgage and you can use that money to invest here, which is kind of cool because you kind of feel like you're investing in an exotic, foreign place, but it's part of the U.S. So you can get a mortgage, and obviously that really enhances your the return on investment that you're making, given the interest rates that are still pretty low. They have been going up a little bit, but still historically they're still very low. Let's talk a little bit about Puerto Rico as a destination. Right now, I've never been here, but what I've seen so far, it's awesome. There's amazing beaches. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's scuba diving. There's kite surfing. What are some of your favorite spots here on the island?
I am a really big fan of the islands that we have off the main island. That to me is a must. You need to get on a plane. It's usually $200, it's $199, dollars to get in a little plane. You can get it from San Juan, within the city. You get on a little plane. It's a 45-minute ride from San Juan. And if you go to Ceiba, which is to the east of Puerto Rico, it's a 15-minute plane ride. So then you get on these little planes, you see the most beautiful views of the island and all of the sea, and then you arrive to these little islands that you feel like you're a million miles away from Puerto Rico, and you're right there. And once you're on these islands, you're really free. There aren't a lot of cops. You kind of do whatever the hell you want. There's really good gastronomy. You like can get scooters or you can get golf carts and run around the islands and like go to these super beautiful beaches, and it's just I love the experiences, and there are a couple of like really cool hotels in these places that if you know about them, they're the best. So that's like my favorite. But obviously you have San Juan, which is pretty cool. But then like once you go west, you can go to Rincon, which is a surf town, and it's super beautiful. Lots of cool gastronomy. It's just a cool place. It's like a surf town. And then to the south, we have a bioluminescent bay that you can go see, and the water is like, I don't know, it's just like you move the water and it's completely like phosphorescent, like it glows in the dark. So we have that, and we also have a bunch of beautiful beaches in the south. So you can really run around the whole island and, check out like a bunch of beach spots. Then we have the rainforest, which is beautiful, but it's cool to just go and kind of like hike around during one day, get into you get into the waterfalls. I know a couple of like really like spots in the rainforest that you have your own little like swimming area and stuff. So that's pretty cool. And then we have caves. You can go explore caves and hang around with bats. And what else can you do?
Sounds so appealing.
I
can't wait.
Hang around with bats.
Some people love that. Some people are like, oh my god.
Let's go to the dark cave and hang out with some bats.
We used to have, when I was young, they used to do raves in those caves. Like, and when I lived...
The bats?
With the bats. Like, you would be, like, dancing to drum and bass with a bat on top of you.
That's awesome.
I lived in London for a while, and I talked to the DJs there, a lot of, like, really known DJs in London. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm from Puerto Rico. And they're like, you're from Puerto Rico? The caves, man! Like, they remember that. Because
That's
it's
awesome.
like, where else in the world do you do a rave in a cave? So, and we've had raves in the rainforest.
And there's like island raves too, right? Where the entire island is just, obviously it'd be like a small, do you remember the Halloween party, the Bacardi Halloween party, like 4 years ago?
I did.
Palomino, right?
That was so hard to get a ticket for. Like, I was like, what the hell is going on? You had to be special to get on this boat and go to this party on an island.
Or you just had to have your own boat. A lot of people took their own boats there.
I think they had Kendrick Lamar as one of the artists.
And a lot of top name artists.
Those things go on here too. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff to do. There's a bunch of stuff to do. Like there are Instagram, a bunch of, there's one called Backpacking Puerto Rico on Instagram. Get on that. And there's so much things to do here. Zip lining, like there's so many things to do here that backpacking PR will never run out of posts. And I've seen posts there that I'm like, what? Where is this? Like, I didn't even know this existed. And I've lived here 31 years of my life, or 30 years. So, yeah, it's very fun. I love it. But you need to like that tropical way of living, because it's definitely like a way.
Island time,
yes.
Andrew, your favorite recommendations for people who come down to Puerto Rico?
God, I mean, there's just so much. The nightlife is probably the best in the Caribbean. So if that's your thing, this is a great spot for you. The beaches, obviously the beaches are beautiful. There's nothing in particular that I would recommend. There's just so much for everybody.
Right. Vincenzo, what do you think?
I mean, a couple days here. I mean, we've gone around. We've seen a little bit of the island. We went to the rainforest yesterday. I thought that was cool. I wish you were there to show us like the real waterfall. But we hiked around a bit.
It's not the same after Maria before. Maria, now it's like being reborn.
I mean, listen, like she said, I mean, they both said, like, there's just a lot of cool stuff. And even, like, in a couple days, just kind of scratching the surface a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we've seen some cool things. And it's one of those things, if you have a car and you know some people or you got an Instagram, someone to follow on Instagram and you can find these places, like, you don't get bored here, So it's cool.
Awesome. Well, we've been talking for a while. There's a lot of people on Instagram who joined us. Is there any final remarks that you guys want to share with the audience when it comes to investing in Puerto Rico, Texas, Airbnb, all that kind of stuff?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, again, from that sort of foreigner, tax perspective, and I've been living abroad for a while, so I mean, I do think that this is a really cool place to set up shop, especially if you're just thinking about moving outside the States. It's pretty easy to acclimate yourself. Like they said, there's a growing sort of community of people moving down here. Plus, you have this sort of English, Spanish, Spanglish advantage. So it's easy, you don't have to navigate the whole foreign language or all the pitfalls of moving abroad, immigration-wise, etc. But, from a tax perspective, it's great. If you have the ability to if you have an online business, a service-based business, be it online marketing, programming, anything digital, then you could legitimately move your business down here and pay a 4% tax rate and then pay yourself, a little salary, the majority in dividends, and really pay a very, very low effective tax rate. So, like I said, that's attracting a lot of people, and I think for the right person, it's pretty much a no-brainer, right? You live down here half the year, you kind of move everything here. The other half, you could be in the States or travel elsewhere and take advantage. And a lot of people are doing that who have their businesses or, do trading or crypto and have some large unrealized capital gains that they want to avoid. So, yeah, with that and just like the beauty and magic of the island, I think it's certainly something to put on people's radar.
Yeah, and one thing that we haven't really touched on yet is the location. It's very centrally located. Like you can be in Miami in a couple hours.
Yeah.
You can be in New York in a few hours. There's lots of other Caribbean islands that are really close by. You're not too far away from Central America. You're not too far away from Colombia and like sort of the northern part of South America as well. So I think that's a really attractive feature of Puerto Rico as well.
And we recently got how do you say, like non-stop flights to Madrid.
Oh wow, Spain, right? Yeah,
and non-stop flights to London.
Wow.
So that's pretty recent, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really
I mean, if you go, from Miami, especially living in Colombia, like it's like you go to Miami Airport, you can fly around the world. So being a few hours outside of Miami. Yeah, it is pretty centrally located. You're right. You get the flights direct. That's even better.
What about the language? Like people speak Spanish and English in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I mean, usually, like most business owners that you're going to be dealing with will probably know English too. So yeah, I think that we're pretty. You really don't have to, like, if you just talk English here, you really don't have to worry a lot about the language. And now you have Google Translator, and you can like walk around with your phone and be like, phone, translate this.
Right. Yeah.
So
and they have a cool feature now where you can point it at some text and it will literally like provide like an overlap on the text. So you put it on the menu, like suddenly like literally like on your phone, like it's almost
crazy.
Like it changes.
Yeah.
So that's really good technology, but yeah, like from my experience, like people seem to have a pretty good, decent understanding of English here.
Yeah.
What Andrew, do you speak Spanish or?
Yeah. I can get by pretty well. Puerto Rican Spanish is a little more difficult than South America or Central America, but I can defend myself. But quite frankly, the white collar workforce here all speaks English. It's the blue collar workforce that probably pretty much primarily speaks Spanish. Obviously, the tourism industry, for the most part, is bilingual. So I I obviously have contractors, so that's where I've had to use my Spanish.
Yeah,
And that's
I
where I
think
learned
with
to-
contractors, yeah. I mean, that's you're all right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But from a tax perspective, I mean, it's one of the best places in the world. From a lifestyle perspective, it's also one of the best places in the world. From an investment opportunity, real estate investment opportunity, also one of the best places in the world. It's really hard to go wrong if you ask me.
Yeah,
There's
I
so
think
many
in general,
tailwinds.
it's really, we Puerto Ricans do a really bad job at appreciating what we have, and we in general undervalue it.
Mhm.
So that's something that I've never been I've always been very clear about how cool Puerto Rico is. That's why I haven't left. I could be anywhere in the world. I have a really good education, and I've traveled, and I could really do whatever I want, but I really love it here, and I really value what we have. And I think that you guys, it was cool to hang out with you guys because I see how you're seeing it from another perspective. When you're within this beauty all the time, you're walking.
Take it for granted.
Yeah, you take it for granted. I was in the mountains yesterday appraising a couple of properties, and I am delighted driving through the mountains. There's just they're just so beautiful, and most people here are they're they're so used to the beauty. They're like whatever.
Yeah.
They don't even if they haven't traveled, even more. The more I travel, the more I love it here. Because the more I learn to appreciate what I have.
And I think that's part of the reason why the real estate was so cheap in these certain areas. Like Old San Juan 5 years ago was so cheap, and I couldn't figure out why. I was like, God, this is one of the only places in the world you could buy something like this on a street like this. This is incredible. This is artwork from 500 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, why the hell is this so damn cheap? And I was like, well, that one's cheap, and then next door down the block is cheap. I'm like, what am I missing, right? I was trying to figure out what it was I wasn't seeing, and then I came to the realization, it's Puerto Rico doesn't promote itself, so there's not very many outsiders here, and the Puerto Ricans are just this is just normal, right? They're just so used to this that they don't value it as high as somebody who's from the United States, and you come here and you're just wow, this is unique, this is cool, and it's dirt cheap, that's just a combination I'm not used to seeing up in the States.
Yeah, I think as an investor, it's really interesting because as an investor, you come here having looked at other places in the world and really being able to compare it from a more an objective way of looking at it. Here, people that live here, they don't have the money that most investors have. They probably haven't even traveled as much as investors have. So they would love to maybe buy a building, but they just can't. So I think that promoting the island will get more people in here with money that can really see it for what it is and not be affected by, maybe the salaries that people are used to here. So it's interesting. I find it's very interesting.
Awesome. Andrew, any final remarks?
Follow me on Instagram at Wick787.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. This first live podcast episode of Get Paid for Your Pet. There's a lot of people have been tuning in. I've been looking at the comments, and so it's been really fun.
Come to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, come to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is awesome. So I'm actually going to Cali, Colombia tomorrow. I'm going to check out my apartment that I bought there. So I'm really excited. I'm going to be in Colombia for a couple of weeks. I'm going to put it on Airbnb, so I'll be doing lots of live videos. So I'll be creating lots of content around it, and hopefully I'll do more of these live podcasts. I think it's really fun to actually meet the people on the ground, meet the Airbnb hosts, meet the investors, and let them explain what the situation is, where the opportunities are. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope to see you next time.
Get paid for your pet. 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 Get paid for your pet.